Hey everyone, it's Dion here with Racers360. Today we're going to be breaking down Sebring International Raceway. It's one of the most difficult racetracks in the country, not only because of the often talked about bumps, but the layout of the track is inherently bumpy, and then it's very temperature dependent on how much grip the track has. In the heat of the day, the track can drop off drastically as the sun starts to set. It's going to be right in your eyes into turn 17. There's a lot of challenges to this flat but long 17-turn racetrack. So without further ado, let's go into it, start breaking down Sebring International Raceway quarter by quarter. So we're here at the start-finish line going into turn one. So turn one is often a corner that's debated. Is it going to be an entry speed corner? Is it going to be an exit speed corner? Are we trying to maximize our entry speed in, or do we want to pick up the throttle early because it's a high speed corner as well? Well, it's sort of right in the middle. Yes, entry speed matters, but oftentimes drivers will float in so much entry speed that they're not going to get back to full throttle until they're out of the exit curve, which is too late. So we really want to be kind of nice in the middle. So as we approach turn one here, we're focused on where we initially braking, coming off, releasing off the heavy brake pressure, and then only picking up initial throttle very far along this corner. So our initial brake zone in almost any car is going to be past this bridge. So we can see here in this car where I'm a little bit of downforce, I'm pretty far past the bridge here. If I'm going to back this up, probably 2-3 car lengths past the bridge. This is where I'm braking. So before the end of the wall, but a good point past the bridge. So most cars, most drivers, if you're braking just past the start of the bridge, it's going to be a good starting point for your brake zone. The next thing here is, see, there's a long corner still to go. We want our eyes looking to the apex already. Our turning point is going to come right at the end of this wall here. You're going to see, watch my hands, and then watch as the car approaches this wall here. So we go a little bit farther forward. Let me clear off that last arrow. Watching the hands. See how the hands are starting to bend this car in right as my front nose gets to the end of the wall. That's going to be our turn-in marker. But notice how slow we're turning in here. It's a high-speed corner, so we want to be smooth to allow the weight to shift slowly so we can maximize our turn-in speed. Next thing here is, where are we going to pick up initial throttle? I still want to be on the brakes. I'm still braking, still braking, still braking, very light on the trail brakes, very light on the trail brakes. I'm now inside of that yellow line, and what we're looking for is going to be probably impossible to tell here because we have a banner on this front car. Let's see if we can back this up and see if we're looking to see the zero board. We can't. So at the top of this fence, right up here where our mirror and the banner are blocking, there is a black small little plaque that has big zero. It's pretty much a zero board. That is our apex point. That's the point where we want to get our left front tire super close into the wall, and that's also the point of where we're initially picking up the throttle. If you're on throttle any earlier than this, you've likely way overslowed the entry of turn one. We want to be coming off the last little bit of brakes here, rolling speed in. This is right here where our apex, right below that big zero board, picking up initial throttle. And the next important part here is we need our eyes looking through the corner. Right now, your eyes should be picking up. You should be asking yourself, how early can I start to unwind the steering wheel so that you're using all the road on exit and you're getting back to full throttle as early as possible. So see here, we're starting to come off that inside, coming off that inside, and you can see as we start to transition, let me highlight this, the transition from concrete to asphalt happens right about here. We can see this exit curve for turn one. Notice how we're already almost all the way out to that exit curve. And then as the exit curve starts, we're almost out in parallel with the exit curve. So what we often see here is a lot of drivers at this point still have their left front tire down close to the inside. Make sure you're coming out and meeting this exit curb as that exit curb starts. That's when you know you've opened your hands and you've used as much road as you should be using. And we definitely want to be back on significant and full throttle easily by now. If you're still not able to get back to full throttle by now, you're probably off the racing line or you're picking up throttle too early. Ideally, back to full throttle over here somewhere. Use all of the track, use a little bit of that exit curb if you need it. That's totally cool. But then hustle the car back to about mid-road before we turn in for turn 3 here. Don't be driving it down the inside because that's going to make this little tiny kink to the right more difficult. It's going to make this next brake zone more difficult. So we want to be middle of the road, and we want to delay our turning back to the right to be allowing us to be straight and parallel with the white line as this grass starts. So the goal here of this turn back to the right is to get the car parallel with this white line. Let me highlight this, with this white line before the end of this access road. So if you turn in too early, what's going to happen is by the time you get to this access road, the car angle is going to be pointed more in this direction and not in this direction. So make sure by the time you get to the end of this access road, you can have your hands straight in the brake zone to maximize your brakes. That's our goal here. Small, easy to get wrong, and it's a small mistake, but it adds up. So into turn 3, most of the time we're starting to brake before the end of this access road. Lower horsepower cars, a little bit more downforce cars can get past the end of this access road. You can see right now, just by looking at the angle of the car here, I'm starting to brake at the end of this access road in this lap. So now into turn 3. This is one of the more difficult corners at Sebring. It is really long, and it's one that we don't want to touch the throttle until we apex. And the apex only comes at the end of the apex curving. So we're going to see, we're going to play here. We're braking, we're releasing. Turning point comes just after this little one cone here on our right-hand side. And again, super slow turn in so that we don't apex too early. I don't want to be apex, and I don't want to be apex, and I'm still off the apex, still off the apex, still off the apex. Only now, you can see here at the very end how I turn a little bit more aggressively, and the apex comes right there at the very end of this curve. That's the apex, and that's the initial throttle application spot. If you're apexing any earlier than that, or you're picking up the throttle any earlier than that, you're doing it incorrectly. Especially important in high horsepower cars, because that late apex allows us to get more rotation. It allows us to get a car angle looking more down the road heading into turn 4, which allows us to get a square to full throttle. When you apex too early here, your car angle will be looking very much more this direction, which means you'll have more steering input, which means you'll be fighting the car more, which means you won't be able to get back to full throttle in between 3 and 4 and potentially 4 and 5 as well. So really important to have those slow hands and a long trail brake through turn 3 so that we can get that rotation and get the car pointed looking down the road. Look where my car is pointed. It's looking towards the apex in turn 4. I get a square to full throttle. Some cars will be easy flat through turn 4. Some will need a little bit of lift. You'll adjust as you need there. And then our goal here out of turn 4, keeping it right here. And then into turn 5, notice how I am still turning right until nearly the end of this curve. Until about halfway to the end of this curve, my hands are still pointed to the right. You can see here on the steering wheel. Only then am I starting to have my light initial brakes. This isn't a corner that we're trying to brake deep into. It's a corner that I'm trying to brake lighter into. Super light on the brakes so we can roll in the entry speed and still focus on the exit. So ultimately in turn 5, the exit's what's matter. Getting a run all the way down to turn 7. But that doesn't mean I want to underdrive the entry. It's very easy to underdrive the entry. So super slow hands, a pretty late apex here. The apex really only comes about 2/3 of the way around the corner, and that's where our initial throttle application comes in as well. There's no great visual on an apex. Like as we were kind of going through there, there's no great thing to say, hey, this is where our apex is. But you can see here, as we start to transition, there's a great kind of a data point for us to look at. As that concrete patch starts, oops, notice how we're still not apexing. Comes a good bit after that concrete patch, about 2 to 3 car lengths after that concrete patch starts. That's where our apex starts. That's where our initial throttle application starts. And then again, we want to make sure our eyes are up, looking forward, so we can open our hands as early as possible. We want to use every inch of the road. And in fact, at Sebring here, it has a raised curb until about there, and then it drops down. It has a flat painted curb as well. We want to be up and against this raised curb already. There it is. You can see it, and then it's going to drop here using every inch of the road, maximizing that run to down to turn 7. Take a breath here at turn 6. Eyes are up, looking far forward. We're looking for that brake zone already in turn 7. Some cars, the brake zone in turn 7 is going to vary drastically. Some cars are braking a good bit before the bridge. Some cars can brake easily past the bridge. And cars with heavy ABS or pretty good ABS, you might even see cars braking down the middle of the track occasionally. The outside line can often get pretty beat up around here. So I don't necessarily say start your weekends off braking down the middle of the track and then swinging back to the outside. But if you're in a car that you're really struggling with ABS overreacting in the brake zone, try just being a car width off and then opening back up before turning in. Definitely not turning in from that point. But most of us, most weekends, you can break down this outside line. Just something to think about, and something that I've had to do as a driver is sometimes kind of adjust the line in the brake zone. So into turn 7, what matters? Exit. I worry about getting back to full throttle as early as possible after the apex. That's what matters to me in turn 7. The second most important thing is trying to maximize my full throttle time into turn 7. So what I really care about here is staying on full throttle as long as possible and getting back to full throttle as long as possible. So that means deep brake zone. As long as we're not screwing up our exit, we want to brake as deep as possible. Hold that heavy pressure, hold that heavy pressure, hold it. And you can see here, another area we want slow hands. The best identifier for the turn-in marker is going to be after the start of this curve here on our left-hand side. Go a little bit further. We're starting to release off this brake pressure pretty quickly right now, about a car length or so past the end of that curve. Past the start of that curve, we're starting to turn in. And notice though, we don't want to apex too early. Notice how our apex only comes after the middle of this yellow curve. So you've got to turn pretty slowly to make that happen. You can turn it at the same point, but if you turn it with too quick of hands, you're going to be apexing closer to the start of this yellow curve, which means at exit, you'll be running out of road. So we want that later apex because we want that rotation to allow us to open the hands and get back to full throttle as early as possible. So we're coming in here, looking after the end of that, after the midpoint of that yellow curve, we're apexing. We're using every inch of that apex curve. And what that allows us to do is get the car pointed correctly. So you can see right now, I am looking, and what I'm trying to do as a driver is I'm looking for this kind of curve here. And I'm trying to say at what point I want to use every inch of that, because that means I've created a straighter line earlier and I've maximized my exit. So what I'm trying to judge right here is how much can I open my hands so I can let the car come out and use that, because the more I open my hands, the quicker I can get back to full throttle. So I'm looking for that point with my eyes, and that's what's determining how much of the road I'm using here and how aggressive my foot's to the floor. I want to be back to full throttle right here. And you can see by using this curve, notice how we're going to make a straight line right over it, and that allows me to use more road. Straight line right over it allows me to get back to full throttle much earlier on the run down to turn 10. And that's what matters at turn 7. Through the S's, check your mirrors, relax in the car, let the hands be kind of relaxed. It gets a little bit bumpy here in the S's. Let the car be free, work it back. One of the best indicators or the best things to take into context when you're trying to find your break point into turn 10. It's a little bit hard to tell in this video, but there's a nice big black spot circle patch right here. Most of the time, a car also kind of, you can feel a dip. After that dip is where I'm trying to attack the brakes in most cars. Not every car. Sometimes in the higher horsepower or lower grip cars, you're braking before that. Lower horsepower or higher downforce cars, you're braking after that. But that's a pretty good zone for most of us. So you can see that's the patch right there. There's the dip. You see it in the nose. I'm able to get down to the floorboard on this lap. Sometimes as downforce increased in these cars, we're able to get a little bit deeper. So into turn 10. It's a really fun corner, and it's one that we want to sacrifice a little bit on the exit in most cars, but we don't want to over-sacrifice. It's about finding a balance here. So you can see our turning point coming right past this one cone here, just past it, before that curb starts, coming off the trail brake, off the trail brake, off the trail brake. Right here is our apex point. No throttle before then, initial throttle here, apexing. And then right now, what I want to do to start off a weekend is I'm going to start off the weekend by sacrificing here on exit. Maybe I'll place the car here. And what my goal is to start off with is to try and be full throttle all the way through 11 and 12. Now, in some cars, that's going to be super easy. And if it's super easy, then what I want to do is use a little bit more road, a little bit more road, a little bit more road out of turn 10 until I can either no longer be flat through 11 and 12, and then I've realized, okay, let me back up one step, sacrifice, and that's how I know how much I need to sacrifice. Or if you can use all of the track and still be flat through 11 and 12, bam, do that. So it sort of depends here what car I'm driving, how much grip I've got. During the heat of the day, I might have to sacrifice a little bit more out of 10 to set up for 11 and 12. In that cool breeze in the morning, I might be able to use all of the track on exit and still be flat through 11 and 12. This is a corner you're going to have to adjust. It's not going to be the same depending on your fuel level loads, your tire wear, the ambient temperatures. All of that will change how much track you use out of turn 10. So you know the priority, full throttle through 11 and 12 if possible. Coming out here, you can see I fought the car a little bit, ended up just left of mid-road, apex about the middle. The next thing here is what I don't want to do in between 11 and 12 is be able or be holding this white line. You've got to let the car be a little bit more free here so that you don't jam yourself up into 12. When you run this white line, you're holding all the way to the inside. A, you're overslowing. B, you're making the radius for turn 12 tighter than it needs to be. So let the car come off a little bit. See how I still have plenty of room out to my right. I'm not using all of the track. I'm going about just to where my right side tires are close to mid-track, apexing here, using all the road on exit to set up for turn 13. Turn 13 is a banked corner, very difficult corner, and one that's pretty inviting for overtaking. Be always a little bit cautious with overtaking here. We see a lot of moves here go wrong. You can absolutely overtake here. It's one of those areas that we just talk a lot caution. It's easy because it's a bending brake zone to get over ambitious and try to shove it up the inside. Oftentimes drivers don't see that move happening, and that's where incidents happen. So into 13, what we want to be doing, most brake zones are going to be coming about middle of this apex curve here, and we want to be braking towards the outside of the track. We're going to be braking towards the outside of the track. As we get out there is when we start to immediately bend back in. It's a pretty early turning point because we have banking. Anytime we have banking, downhill or uphill corners, we're typically going to want an earlier turning point. So we're coming in here, braking hard, straight line as possible. You'll see I'm braking towards the outside of the track. I'm getting outside of the track, I got my hands straight. As I kind of get out there, and as this curve really starts to widen, that's my turning point. See how early it is. The transition from asphalt to concrete only happens that far away. I'm still way before that, and my hands are starting to bend in towards the apex. It's an early turning point, but it's a super slow turning point. See how I'm still almost all the way to the left side of the road here. I'm super slow, super slow. The next thing is no throttle until you get into that divot at the apex. It's a really difficult corner because you've got to be as close as possible to this apex curve but you can't hit the apex curb. It's a really aggressive curb. You can really jack up and upset the car, but you've got to be close to it because in banking, the closer you get to it, the more grip you're going to get from that banking. So we want to be super slow on the hands, rolling in speed. Let the banking catch the car. No throttle, no throttle, no throttle, no throttle. See how close I am to it. Here's the dip, aggressive throttle in the dip, using every inch of the road. And you want to be back to full throttle before you get out to this exit curve. Every inch of the road, bringing it back to the right side of the road for Bishop's Bend. Now, Bishop's Bend in 15 here, difficult section. Eyes up is really critical. Most cars will be flat or as close to flat as possible through 15. It's a really fast corner. So using every inch of the road, turning in at the start of this access road, using this apex curb if you need just a little bit, not the whole thing. If you could be flat through here, be flat through here. If you need a little bit of lift is fine. Ultimately, where most speed corrections are going to need to happen are going to be for the second apex. So still a lot of cars can be full throttle through the second apex and still keep it to the left side of the road. Well, my goal here is I want to be bringing as much speed as possible through the second apex, but I want to be able to make sure I can get back to all the way parallel with the grass and next to the grass before the turning point for 15. So if I could be flat through that second apex, but the car pushes me to where I'm all the way out over here while turning in for 15, I don't want to be flat. I don't want to be pushed all the way to the inside here, because now I'm going to hurt myself through 15, which will upset me into 16, which is going to hurt my run all the way to 17. So as long as you can get, you don't need to be perfectly next to the grass as it starts, but as long as you can be pointed and braking towards the outside of the road and getting to the outside of the road before the turning point, that's how you know you've maximized as much speed as possible through the second apex of Bishop's Bend. So using all the road, and if you need a speed adjustment, do it as you start to bend the car in for the second apex. That's when we want the front end to grip up a little bit. Everything's gonna be smooth. It's high speed, so you can't make abrupt changes. So be smooth with everything, your inputs on your feet and your hands. Getting it braking, hard initial brakes, all the way to the left side of the road. Pretty early turning point through 15. Now, there are some corners where if you miss an apex by a little bit, who really cares? You miss, there's no real big negative. Turn 15, there is a big grip difference between when you can get your right front tire up on this curb and use all of this curb versus when you just miss it and you run even on that white line. You've got to get your front right tire up on this apex curve. There's a lot more grip there than when you miss it. So you see here, I'm coming up. I'm using every little bit of that curve. I don't want to come to the inside of it, but I'm using every bit of it. My initial throttle application comes just past the apex point, and then using pretty much every bit of the road here, coming through, still on throttle, still on throttle, still on throttle. It's very easy. Turn 16. It's you're wanting to get that run out of 16. That's really what matters here, right? And we've always been told the earlier you pick up the throttle, the better exit you've got. You've got to ignore that comment that's wrong. What matters out of turn 16 is getting back to full throttle as early as possible. So to be able to do that, we don't want to be over slowing the entry, and we don't want to be picking up the initial throttle before the apex. So you've got to stay aggressive into 16, getting as much of the car over this white line here. You can see this is a little kind of separation. We want to get over that. I don't want to end up ridiculously far to the left. I want to get to where my right side tires are on the line here, just inside of it. You can see I want to be getting back to the left, but you're only braking as you start to get over there. It's super light on the brakes, turning in. And if you're back to throttle by now, which a lot of drivers are, you've done this incorrectly, because now you're going to induce understeer. That understeer is not going to allow you to get back to full throttle. So instead, you still want to be trail braking right now. Coming off the trail brakes, coast a little bit. Right here is where we're starting to pick up initial throttle. Look at my hands. Right here. Bam. As those hands start to open, initial throttle, you should be back to full throttle by now before you get out to the exit curb for sure. And then use every inch of the road out here. In turn 16, when you're turning in, by now, my eyes are trying to look for that exit curve. Look for that exit curve. Open those hands as early as possible. Use every inch of the road so that you can maximize your run down to turn 17. Again, into 17, get your eyes up, relax the hands on the steering wheel. It's a difficult corner, but one that's very long, and one we want to bring a lot of entry speed into. So most cars will be braking about the 4 cone here. If you can brake deeper than that, great. One thing we want to focus on is it's a very long brake zone. So we want to get the car pointed, braking towards this wall. We want to come in and apex this wall right by the flag stand. Always make sure you're looking for the flagger here. It's blind past here. It's a really long corner. So of almost any flagger on any racetrack, turn 17 might be one of the most critical to make sure you're looking at. So we want our hands straight as we apex this wall so that we use the track. Notice how I'm about a tire width or 2 tire widths off the inside of the wall. That's fine. A small little tip here to roll more entry speed. Most cars are going to have 2 to 3 downshifts throughout 17. Most cars are going from 6th gear to 3rd gear or 6th gear to 4th gear in that range. You want to do, if you've got only 2 downshifts, do 1 before the wall, and then I want to save that last downshift for way past the wall. In fact, if you look at my RPM, the rev here, you can see the lights flash. That's where my last downshift comes. So you want to save your last downshift for way past the wall. That's an easy way to help you roll in more entry speed. When you do all of your downshifts by now, you've got to slow down the car too much to be able to do that, and then there's still a lot of corner left. So easy way to roll more entry speed is delay that last downshift until you're out into this kind of arena feel where it opens up for you. So we want to be straight hands. There is not much to look at over here. It's hard to tell on video. There's a ton of lines on this video, but there is a white, or now it's black line that kind of runs like this. I want to come out and get my left wheels over it. Once again, here, that's what I'm looking for right there. If I back this up a little bit, you can see just a little bit more. There it is, there it is, there it is. Get your left wheels over it. But the better visuals are going to come later in this corner. So I want to be coming off the brakes, coming off the brakes, coming off the brakes. The next great visual here is, let's go highlight this. There are 2 yellow lines right here and right here. You can see they start as 1 yellow line back in here, and then they start to separate. Notice where you normally are. Go back, watch your videos, and see where you run. Most drivers we see at Racers360 are going to have their right side tire on the inside yellow line. Look how much further to the left I am. I am much further to the left, to the point where I'm not even getting on this second yellow line. What that allows me to do is, A, that means I've rolled more speed. I've kept it wider, but now by being wider here, notice how I'm going to exaggerate this, but my car is going to be looking more in this direction as we go under the bridge, where if you're running that far to the inside, the car direction is much straighter. So where I'm looking like this, they're looking like this, which means the second half of the corner is much tighter if you're that far in, which means you're not going to be able to get back to full throttle as early as I am. So what I've done is I'm able to roll more entry speed, and I've got my car positioned to get me back to full throttle as early as possible. I'm starting to feed initial throttle in as I'm approaching the bridge, and I'm trying to get back to full throttle as I go underneath the bridge. That's my goal. And notice again, I'm about a full car width off the inside under the bridge. Next point is, I don't want to apex this inside grassy area here. We see a lot of drivers apexing in here. Notice where I'm going to place the car. It's going to be about a car width off then. Instead, use the road. Let the car be free, and get out in parallel with this wall as early as possible. That means the more that open your hands are, the higher speed you can be going. You're not asking as much lateral in terms of lateral load from the tires in the car. So you want to be open as much as possible so that you can get that run into turn 1. But as you saw here, every car is going to be slightly different. Every driver's working on different things. The conditions of the day are different. So while we hope this is helpful, we would love to work with you in a personalized way at Racers360, where you can upload your video from any camera system or any data system and have one of the best coaches in the world give you a personalized coaching lesson quarter by quarter, just like what we did here, no matter when you're racing or what you're racing, from Sebring or from any other track in the world. We'd love to work with you at Racers360.com. We appreciate you being a subscriber. We hope this was helpful. Best of luck. Enjoy your weekends down here. Remember, conditions change. Sometimes that's going to adjust your lines at Sebring. Get your eyes up and have fun.